Where am I going from here?
I spoke earlier about some of the immediate actions I'll take to address the economic crisis. But we also have to take a longer view. We have to stop just talking about healthcare reform and lost jobs and energy independence and finally do something about it. All across America, I've seen entrepreneurs and innovators who point the way to a better future, starting with energy independence. Recently, I visited the McKinstry Company in Seattle. They're retrofitting schools and office buildings to make them energy efficient, creating jobs, saving their customers money, reducing carbon emissions, and helping end our dependence on Middle Eastern oil. As president, I'll use companies like McKinstry as a model for the nation. I'll invest $15 billion a year in energy efficiency and renewable sources of energy, like wind, solar, and biofuels, creating 5 million clean energy jobs over the next decade, jobs that pay well and can never be outsourced. And I'll help our auto companies retool so that the fuel-efficient cars of the future are built right here in America. I'll also make it easier for you to afford these new cars with a tax credit so we can get as many on the road as possible. And to further reduce our demand for foreign oil, I'll tap our natural gas reserves, invest in clean coal technology, and expand domestic production of oil. But we know government can't do it all. That's why I'll call on every American to join in conservation efforts. I believe we need to usher in a new era of responsibility. Across the country, families are tightening their belts, and so should Washington. That's why, for my energy plan, my economic plan, and the other proposals you'll hear tonight, I've offered spending cuts above and beyond their cost. I'll also go through the federal budget, line by line, eliminating programs that don't work, and making the ones we do need work better and cost less. And one of the biggest savings we can make is to change our policy in Iraq.
We're currently spending $10 billion a month in Iraq when they have a $79 billion surplus. It seems to me that if we're going to be strong at home as well as strong abroad, that we've got to look at bringing that war to a close.
We are actually spending more in Iraq now than we were spending when the war first started. How many schools would that build? How many hospitals? How many people could get health care? How many college scholarships could we give our youth? It's time for us to invest some of that money right here in America.
When I read his economic plan and I saw the people endorsing it and all the new ideas, Warren Buffett and others, I thought, this is the right plan for America.
Barack has looked at the small business side of the American economy and says, look, that's where most innovation and entrepreneurship is. Let's give them the rocket fuel to really accelerate, rather than giving tax cuts to, the Exxon Mobils or big oil companies that need not 1 ounce of help from government to be very, very successful.
So I'm not worried about CEOs, I'm not worried about corporate lobbyists, I'm not worried about the drug companies or the oil companies or the insurance companies. They'll be fine, they're going to look out for themselves. I'm worried about the couple that's trying to figure out how they're going to retire. I'm worried about the family that's trying to figure out how they can save for their child's college education. I'm worried about the single mom that doesn't have health insurance. I'm worried about the guy who's worked in a plant for 20 years and suddenly sees his job shipped overseas. That's who I'm worried about. And that's who I'm going to be fighting for and thinking about every single day that I'm in the White House. Juliana Sanchez is a widow with 2 children and a mortgage. Her parents, Richard and Francis, were both educators. Like her family, Juliana's devoted her life to giving her daughter, Jessica, and son, Adam, a good education. Every morning, she's up before the sun.
I work in a school for at-risk kids.
Good morning. How are you?
A lot of the families here go through extreme financial hardships.
It's about time we see you. Are you gonna stay?
At the end of the school day, her work is only half done.
Come on, baby. Jump in.
She works for a healthcare company taking care of Shelley, a 7-year-old with special needs.
Most of us that are educators, we all have second jobs.
The answer lies in your hands. Effective teaching starts here.
And to advance herself and develop her skills, She takes teacher training classes.
Financially, the pressure is just to keep your head above water so you don't feel like you're drowning all the time. Healthcare, food, electric, gas, it takes out so much out of my paycheck. You go buy a gallon of milk and you're like going, okay, is it a gallon or a half gallon? What can I afford? You feel like you can't breathe even though you need to breathe.
Every parent in America wants the same thing: a good education for their child.
Responsibility for our children's success doesn't start in Washington. It starts in our homes. No education policy can replace a parent who's involved in their child's education from day one, who makes sure their children are in school on time, helps them with their homework, and attends those parent-teacher conferences. No government program can turn off the TV set, or put away the video games, or read to your children.
My father, I only met him once for a month when I was 10. I probably was shaped more by his absence than his presence. My mother, she said to herself, my son, he's an American and he needs to understand what that means. And she was working full-time, so she'd wake me up at 4:30 in the morning. We'd sit there and go through my lessons, and I used to complain and grumble. You can imagine an 8-year-old kid having to wake up at 4:30, and if I grumbled, she'd say, well, this is no picnic for me either, Buster.
Now is not the time for small plans. Now is the time to finally meet our moral obligation to provide every child a world-class education. I'll invest in early childhood education. I'll recruit an army of new teachers and pay them higher salaries and give them more support. And in exchange, I'll ask for higher standards and more accountability.
We can create schools that work, because I've seen them. 3 years ago, only half the high school seniors at the Mapleton School in Thornton, Colorado were accepted to college. But after a rigorous school reform program, this year all 44 seniors were accepted. And under my education plan, those students could get a tax credit to cover their tuition at public colleges and universities in exchange for serving their community or their country. Just as I believe every American should have access to an affordable college education, I also believe every American has a right to affordable health care. In the last year, I've visited many hospitals that are computerizing records and implementing technology that improves patient care and dramatically reduces costs. That's why my health care plan includes improving information technology, requires coverage for preventive care and pre-existing conditions, and lowers health care costs for the typical family by $2,500 a year. And you can keep your same coverage and your same doctor. My mom passing away was one of the toughest moments of my life. For her to die of cancer so quickly was a shock, and it felt arbitrary. Anybody who's gone through that kind of process knows how difficult it is and heartbreaking it is to see somebody you love go on that path, and it's a lonely path. It was a reminder to me that boy, life sure is short, and you better seize the moment.
I stand before you today to announce my candidacy for President of the United States of America. I'm in this race because I'm tired of talking about the outrage of 47 million people without health insurance. I want to start doing something about it. My mother never saw her grandchildren. That breaks